Hello guys, welcome back to iPhone and iPad application development tutorial. I'm sure you guys are enjoying the tutorials. I'll try to keep it as simple and as easy to understand as possible. Today what we're going to learn is basically to develop an app with a little bit interactivity on the app. I'll show you before we even get into it. So what we're trying to build here is an app which allows a little bit of interactivity. So say for example somebody moves the slider, you would have the value come up, or if somebody enters the name, we would see the name of the person when we click on the C button. So the interactivity is clicking on the C button and moving the slider, and the values would appear automatically. It's a very basic sort of app that we're trying to make here, but we will graduate from one level to the other as we go along. This may take more than one videos, so please follow the video through unless you have learned how to do this and you have practiced it on your Mac machine as well. So what we would do is we would close this and we would start with a fresh app and say create new app. We would say view based application, and this time let's select iPad because we've only been working on iPhone. So let's select iPad and say choose. Let's call it the YT app for now. We're wanting to keep it simple because we don't want the dots to appear when we do the simulation. Now if you do a build and run now, you would see a blank screen because obviously that's what we learned in the previous lessons, that if you don't do anything, do a build and run, it would appear as a blank screen. What we need to do to begin our application is open the view controller. Now because it's an iPad app, the view controller is much bigger than the normal one, but what we would do is make it half the size because we would only be working on the top bit of it. We don't need the full screen as of now. And we need some objects to be placed here, so we would open the library. I would advise that all of you please go through the objects here, all of them, and read the descriptions one by one, because then you would have a better understanding of what object does what on the application. Now for this tutorial we would need a text field where people would enter the name. We would need a button, so let's make it slightly bigger, and we would need a label where the name would appear, and we would extend this label as well. Now we don't want the word label to appear when people are looking at the screen, so it's best to get rid of it, and we want something to appear here, so we would say click here. Right, we will do the slider later on. I want to explain you one at a time. We don't need the library now, so we can close it. And what we would do is just save it the way it is and simulate. Okay, so it appears here, but it's pretty basic. Unless we tell people what to do, they wouldn't know what to do. So what I would suggest is we open the file zoner and click on this, change the properties and put a placeholder. A placeholder is like a hint, so please enter your name, and you would see it comes up here, please enter your name. You can do a lot of other variables, you can do text, the change of text color, text font, etc, etc. We're not going too deep into that as of now. So this is how it is. Now what we need to do is we need to tell Xcode that look, I've placed 3 objects on the view window and I want to name these objects so that I can call them more easily and ask them to do specific tasks for me. More or less in a way that if you have children at home, you always name them, so it's easier for you to call them, and if you want them to do a specific task, you can call them by their name and say, look, Tom, you do this, Sally, you do that, Anna, you do this, and Andrew, you do that. All right. So what we would do now is we would go to the controller.h file, which is where we name the headers, and since it is done through, since we have put the objects using interface builder, we would say IB outlet. So we want to tell IB outlet that we have a child or an object called UI text field. So you have, it's more or less, telling people that I have a boy and I want to call it Tom. So you want to tell IB outlet that you have a text field and you want to call it, say, Tom text field. All right. You also have another child or another object. I keep using the word child so that it's easier for us to relate. Yeah, you have another child and that is a button, so it's a user interface button, and you want to call that, say, Sally button. And please don't forget we have one more, and that is a user interface label, which is where the name would appear, and you want to call it, say, Anna label. All right. You must always put a semicolon at the end, because otherwise it wouldn't work. Now, after you've described your objects, you would need to create an action. So you want to tell interface builder, Mr. Interface action, I want to create an action which should be named as when button is pressed, or even more appropriate if we want to call it when Sally button is pressed. Now I'm using such a long name for the sake of explaining you, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend using such big names for the variables. We copy this. In the .h file we only define the names or the headers, but the actual action is initiated in the .m file. So you go to the bottom of the .m file, after the bracket you paste that, open a curly bracket. First let me write it and then I will explain to you. So you write, the label was called, say, Anna label dot text should be equal to Tom text field dot text colon and curly bracket close. So what we've done here is we've defined an action which says that whenever the Sally button is pressed, then the Anna label would display the name that is entered in the Tom text field. It's pretty simple. Now let's save it and run it. It says save all. Yes, we need to save it, otherwise it wouldn't work. So you'd see that it appears here, but is very, very basic. Yeah. So we're going to quit the simulator, and the reason why this please enter your name didn't appear on the simulator was we didn't save this view window. So what we now need to do is open the file owner, go to the view window, open the file owner, click on this arrow button here. You would see that whatever name you had given to your objects, it appears here. Now this is the inspector. If you remember, if I close this, I go to tools and I go to inspector. So now there is an inspector who ensures that the tasks are done. So you need to tell the inspector who's who. For example, Anna label, you need to drag it to Anna label and tell the inspector that this is Anna label. Now coming back to it, you need to also tell who's Sally button. So we know that this is the Sally button. We also need to tell who's Tom. So this is Tom. Now if you see there's a received actions, it says when Sally button is pressed. So somebody has to do that action, and out of this window we want this button to do that action. So what we would do is drag this +1 here, and out of the actions that we get, we want to select touch up inside. So whenever people touch that button, inside that button, it would perform the action. And now we say Command S, which is save, Command S, which is save, and we say build and run. Alright, so you see now that please enter your name has appeared here. What we need to do is enter a name, so I'm typing my name. And I press click here, and woo, we've got our first success. We've got the name appear here. Now, since the video is getting over 10 minutes, what I would do is I would explain in the next lesson how to add the slider. So please bear with me and watch the next lesson to see how we add the slider. For anybody who has difficulty understanding it, please write a comment, and I will try and explain that to you in a more detailed manner. Watch out for the next video where we would discuss the slider, and if you like the videos, please don't forget to subscribe. Cheers for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.